Answering the Hard Questions, Learning Answers to Understand and Defend the Christian Faith. Third edition, unpublished, by Robert R. Hill. Introduction. This book was written to help prepare genuinely born-again Christians to be able to answer the questions that will come up as they interact with people about the Christian faith and the biblical narrative. I want you to be confident that there are answers to many questions about the Bible and the Christian faith, and I want you to be ready to share your knowledge and beliefs. You will see that I repeat things frequently throughout this book because some ideas and concepts apply to multiple topics. Every Christian is automatically an ambassador for Christ simply because we wear the label Christian. The people in your sphere of influence watch and listen to how you respond to life in word and deed. Many of these people have questions about the Bible and the Christian worldview, so they look at your life and listen to your words to evaluate Christ and Christianity. And your children are looking and listening too. As ambassadors for Christ, we must be able to give answers to the hard questions that have been around for quite a while. But the hard truth is that most Christians in this information age don't know the answers to the questions the world has about God and the Bible. Even though some questions are a mystery in this life, many hard ones can be answered if we educate ourselves. The world is actively converting and brainwashing our American society into a secular, humanistic worldview. People need to see that we are different and that our message is true and believable, not just because the Bible says it, but because actual science and logic support the biblical worldview. They need to see us all speaking and believing in the same fundamental doctrines of the faith. They must see us confidently, clearly, and convincingly defend and explain the Christian faith and the Bible. But we must do this in a winsome and loving manner, because if all we do is answer questions and win debates, we may actually push people away from Christ by our uncaring attitudes and demeanor. 1 Corinthians 8:1 says, "Knowledge makes arrogant, but love edifies." It's not just about answering questions and winning arguments, but bringing souls into God's kingdom. Christians must exude the love of Christ in their lives so that people can see it in us and be drawn to Christ. 1 Corinthians 13:2 says, "If I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing." The world has questions, and we must be God's ambassadors to people who have only heard negative things about Christ and Christianity in the secular news and media. Now, you do not have to be a scientist to be able to defend the truth, but you should know where people can get the deeper technical information if they want the details. This book does not give quick soundbite and trite answers like, "just believe." I attempt to build an understanding by looking at reality from God's point of view. Please journey with me as we explore reality through the biblical lens. But even if you're not a Christian, I pray that you would consider this reasonable presentation of the Christian faith for your evaluation. I want everyone to continue their critical thinking skills, but we all have internal beliefs and presuppositions that bias our view and assessment of reality. Confirmation bias, the tendency to only accept evidence and arguments that align with our current worldview and beliefs, is a part of human nature. I ask that we all be honest about that, even Christians. The truth may be suppressed because of incorrect worldviews and religions, but ultimately it will be found if people seek it. Now, here is a classical challenge about the existence of an all-powerful, good God. Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then where comes evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? These arguments were brought up by Epicurus, who was an ancient Greek philosopher. But as we shall see, there is another reasonable option to consider, but it can only be answered in the biblical worldview context, and this will be covered more in Chapter 4 on the subject of evil. Chapter 1. The Root Questions. The attacks of atheism against the Christian worldview. No question should be off limits if it is asked with the intent of seeking the truth, but many Christians do not know how to answer some hard questions about the Bible and the Christian faith. The following 10 questions are from a militant atheistic website. These 10 questions were intentionally designed to devastate the faith of a Christian who would stumble upon them. Could you answer these questions? What would you do as a Christian if an unsaved friend asked you one of these questions? And what would you do if your children asked you one of these questions? And if you're a non-Christian, have you ever wondered about these questions? Number 1. Why won't God heal amputees? Number 2. Why are there so many starving children in the world? Number 3. Why does God demand the death of so many innocent people in the Bible? Number 4. Why does the Bible contain so much anti-scientific nonsense? Number 5. Why is God such a huge proponent of slavery? Number 6. Why do bad things happen to good people? Number 7. Why didn't any of Jesus' miracles leave behind any evidence? Number 8. How do we explain that Jesus has never appeared to you? Number 9. Why would Jesus want you to eat his body and drink his blood? Number 10. Why do Christians get divorced at the same rate as non-Christians? There is a multitude of questions and challenges to the Christian faith that come up in the marketplace of ideas, and it's impractical to carry around a set of answer books or constantly go to an answer app on our mobile devices. We can learn the answers to most of the challenge questions by getting to the root of the questions. When you know the answers and the reasons behind them, you will be confident and competent to share your faith. Your doubts will disappear. You won't be afraid of people's questions, but rather eager to talk to people. You won't need to go to an answer app or book. The root questions. Just as a tree has roots that go deep and a myriad of branches that stem out from the roots, so likewise, questions about Christianity have a multitude of branch questions which can be traced down to a root question. Now, in apologetics, you can spend much time clipping at the many branches, or you can get to the roots. Below you will see 7 root questions in bold print. Underneath each root question, you will see several branch questions. If you learn the answer to the root question, you can answer most branch questions that stem from it. Number 1. How can God be real when secular science claims that everything has an explanation without God? God is just a myth from the past that some still foolishly cling to. This will be covered in chapter number 2. If you know how to answer this root question, then you could answer these branch questions more easily. Why does the Bible contain so much anti-scientific nonsense? How could the sun stand still in the sky without everything being flung off the face of the earth? How can anyone believe the Bible, which says the universe is thousands of years old, when science can see stars that are billions of light years away? Considering all the discoveries of modern science, how can anyone say evolution is false? Number 2, if God is real, then why doesn't he show himself? Why can't we see him? Where are the miracles? Or as the people asked Jesus one day, what miraculous sign will you give that we may see it and believe you? What will you do? John chapter 6, verse 30, NIV. This will be covered in more detail in chapter number 3. But if you know how to answer this root question, then you could answer these branch questions more easily. Why won't God heal amputees? Why didn't any of Jesus' miracles leave behind any evidence? How do we explain that Jesus has never appeared to you? Number 3, if God is real, why does he allow suffering and evil to continue? Why hasn't God stepped into the world and made things right? This will be covered in chapter 4. This root question covers the following branch questions. Why are there so many starving children in the world? Why is God accused of being a proponent of slavery? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why did God allow blank to happen to me? And you can fill in the blank. Why did my spouse leave me for another? Why does God allow human trafficking and torture to continue? Why does God allow opposing religions to flourish? Why does God allow holocausts and religious persecution? Why doesn't God stop pedophiles? Number 4, if God is a merciful, kind, and forgiving God, then why did he order the slaughter of whole people groups, including men, women, children, and their animals too? This will be covered in chapter 5. This root question covers the following branch questions. Why did God demand the death of so many innocent people in the Bible? Why would God call for the stoning of disobedient children? And why did God change from being mean in the Old Testament to kind in the New Testament? Number 5, why would a loving God send anyone to eternal hell? This will be covered in chapter 6. This root question covers these branch questions. Why is there an infinite punishment for a finite set of sins? Why is Jesus the only way to God in heaven? Why should we be punished for the sin of a distant ancestor? Why does God send people to eternal hell if they have never heard the gospel? Why does God cause eternal torment in the of the lost in a lake of fire in a body that cannot be destroyed or die? That seems sadistic. Isn't eternal separation enough? Number 6, how can God be real since the Bible says God is love, but commands the brutal death of innocent animals in the Old Testament? And Jesus says to eat his body and drink his blood. And there's other weird things in the Bible too. This will be covered in chapter 7. This root questions covers the following type of branch questions. Why would Jesus want you to eat his body and drink his blood? How can looking at a bronze snake on a pole heal anyone from snakebite? How could a donkey talk to a man? And how could a sea part in one night and the Israelites walk through it on, quote, dry land? Number 7, how can God be real since we do not see a difference between people who call themselves Christians and the rest of the world? This will be covered in chapter 8. And this root question covers these branch questions. Why do Christians get divorced at the same rate as non-Christians? Why don't we see Christians doing what Christ told them to do, such as feed the poor, adopt orphans, and visit prisons? Why is Sunday morning the most segregated hour in America? Why do some non-Christian religions display better acts of righteousness and compassion than most Christians? And why do Christians shoot their wounded